Hey, it's Matt from Hidden Machine here, speaking to you from January 2023. Later this year, we'll see the release of Alan Wake 2, a game that was first announced back in December of 2021. That announcement came just a couple of months after the release of Alan Wake Remastered. The remaster of Alan Wake was first announced back in September of 2021, and it immediately sparked discussions about the inevitability of an Alan Wake sequel. The first Alan Wake game was initially an Xbox 360 exclusive, hitting the console in May of 2010. Back then, Microsoft canceled an in-development PC port of the game, but after continued pressure from Remedy, a PC port was eventually greenlit. Developed in just 5 months, the PC version of Alan Wake was made by a small team from Remedy who was working alongside Finnish development studio Nitro Games. This PC port helped the game to achieve the cult status that it has today. The initial 360 release was eclipsed by Red Dead Redemption, which came out the same week as Alan Wake. However, over the coming months and years, Alan Wake would go on to sell over 3 million copies. It's a game that has a very dedicated following, and it's a cornerstone of the Remedy Connected universe, which is a sort of shared continuity that's thread through all of the Remedy Entertainment developed games. If you're curious about that, I have 2 videos on the topic here on the channel. One is a brief, spoiler-free introduction, and the other is a lengthy, semi-comprehensive breakdown of the entire concept. This is all to say that Alan Wake is an important game to a lot of people, and Alan Wake 2 is primed to be an equally impactful game. The story of Alan Wake 2's development is a long and arduous one. Work on the game started shortly after the release of Alan Wake. However, Remedy struggled to find a publisher for the game at the time, and the project was put on hold. Since then, Remedy has developed several other games, most notably Quantum Break and Control. Each of those games prominently feature cameos from Alan Wake, and they do a lot to tease at what Alan Wake 2 might look like. There's been over a decade of anticipation building up for Alan Wake 2, but there are still a lot of people who haven't played Alan Wake, and making a sequel to a 13-year-old game isn't the easiest feat. I have to assume that Remedy was aware of this, and that awareness is likely what spurred them to develop Alan Wake Remastered. In concept, this remaster could introduce new audiences to the game and get folks up to speed on the story before the release of Alan Wake 2. In addition to that, the remaster could ever so slightly reimagine some parts of the game, in an effort to help Alan Wake fit even more snugly into the Remedy Connected universe. Without getting too deep into things, it's worth noting that many of the concepts of Control and Quantum Break were first established in Alan Wake, and then expanded on through the supplemental materials that were included in the special edition and PC port of the game. Control centers around the Federal Bureau of Control, or the FBC, which is a government agency that attempts to document and control unexplained phenomena. Early iterations of these concepts appear in Alan Wake and those supplemental materials, but over the years, those ideas became a lot more fleshed out, and so Alan Wake Remastered was an opportunity for Remedy to sort of retcon those new ideas back into the original game. Unfortunately for Remedy, Alan Wake Remastered didn't achieve anywhere near the same success as the original game. It was able to successfully integrate story elements from Control, and it included a few Easter eggs that appear to be setting up the events of Alan Wake 2. But when it came to actually bringing new players into the fold, the game appears to have fallen short. Throughout 2022, there were several articles published that detailed how Alan Wake Remastered wasn't reaching the sales numbers that Remedy hoped it would, with some reports stating that as of the first quarter of 2022, Alan Wake Remastered had failed to turn a profit. Here in 2023, I regularly see posts online asking if new players should try Alan Wake Remastered or opt for the original version of the game, which technically is not the original version. They're referring to the 2012 PC port. So in the context of this video, I'll be calling that PC port the original version of Alan Wake. Personally speaking, I think that if you're on PlayStation consoles, which never received a port of the original game, then Alan Wake Remastered is definitely worth your time. However, if you're playing on Xbox or PC, I believe that you would be much better off playing the original version of the game. Not only is it half the price of the remaster, it also comes with an incredible amount of bonus materials that are absent from the remaster. And beyond that, despite being 10 years behind the remaster, it performs better overall. Upon launch, Alan Wake Remastered was plagued with game-breaking bugs. Beyond all sorts of visual glitches, there were several persistent bugs that halted player progress in the game, with the only fix being to ditch your progress and entirely restart the chapter that you're on. The game received several patches, and according to my research, the most recent patch came in January of 2022. This patch fixed issues caused by the previous patch. Yeah, the patch for Alan Wake Remastered, released in December of 2021, made it so that some players could no longer hear dialogue during cutscenes. It's been a whole year now since that last patch, and it seems pretty obvious to me that the game won't be receiving any further support. So were they able to fix up all of those issues? Well, no. A cursory look at the Alan Wake subreddit shows that people are regularly experiencing bugs in Alan Wake Remastered, and those bugs are not present in the original game. It seems that recent console updates on the Xbox platforms have resurrected that dialogue bug, and PC players are subjected to crashes and connectivity issues. For a time, the Alan Wake subreddit had 2 stickied bug report threads that were supposedly being monitored by the devs. Combined, these threads had over 300 comments, with players reporting all sorts of issues, many of which are still present in the game. Before making this video, I decided to play through various chapters of Alan Wake Remastered, and then play through those same chapters in the Steam release of Alan Wake. In terms of gameplay and mechanics, the 2 releases are nearly identical. Alan Wake Remastered was intended to be a purely visual upgrade, since the game wasn't being remade from scratch or ported to a new engine. It's just a remaster, not a full-on remake. It's on the same engine that it was over a decade ago, and to be honest, I think that's fine. It's totally valid to criticize the mechanics of Alan Wake, whether you dislike the fact that Alan can only run for a short pace before becoming winded, or the fact that enemies constantly flank you, and it's not always easy to see where an attack is coming from. Personally, I love how the game feels, but I know it's not for everyone. My biggest criticism of Alan Wake Remastered is that it looks like a sloppy and incomplete game, especially when compared to the original release. I'm going to show you some side-by-side comparisons of the 2 versions of Alan Wake. And to set the tone for this exercise, I'll let you know that Alan Wake Remastered crashed within my first 5 minutes of running it.
I was in shock from the crash.
In comparison, I've played the original Alan Wake on Xbox and PC a combined total of 3 times all the way through, and I never once had it crash. The facial animations in the original game were something that got some criticism at the time of its release. And to be fair, the remaster does a great job of updating those animations. However, the remaster also screws up plenty of animations. In this most recent playthrough, the first time I noticed something weird with the remaster was during the opening tutorial section. This part of the game introduces combat and lets you take down an enemy. In Alan Wake, the last enemy that you take down in an encounter will have this sort of slow-mo death animation, which is a nod to the combat in the Max Payne games, and this same type of animation would also appear in Quantum Break. In the original Alan Wake, enemies sort of ragdoll when you defeat them, and it looks like this. In the remaster, enemies are prone to all sorts of odd, unnatural death animations, where the enemy characters appear to freeze and then awkwardly levitate, and sometimes they glitch out even harder during this levitation. Shortly after this interaction, you'll encounter Clay Stewart. Initially, this might seem like a throwaway character. However, Clay is actually an integral part of the Remedy Connected Universe, and he wrote an in-universe book called The Alan Wake Files, which is basically the culmination of his investigation into the whereabouts of Alan Wake. This book clocks in at nearly 130 pages, and is available as an actual printed book with the special edition of the 360 game, or as a PDF with the original PC port. It's a really cool way to build up the world of Alan Wake, and for some reason, it is entirely absent from Alan Wake Remastered. Clay Stewart is drawn to the story of Alan Wake because he has a series of shared dreams with Alan. This opening tutorial section is one of those shared dreams, and in the original game, it looks like this.
This way, this way! Hurry! It's me! Clay Stewart, remember? Quickly, get inside! There's no time to lose!
And in the remaster, it looks like this. So far, these are all things that I believe could be overlooked by players who have never experienced the original Alan Wake. I could easily see someone attributing these janky animations to the game being over 10 years old. However, despite its flaws, the original Alan Wake really doesn't have much jank. The biggest criticism that I can lob at the original game is the fact that it has some low-res cutscenes and some texture pop-in here and there. I've played fully through the remaster twice now, and I didn't experience as many textures popping in as I did in the original, but I did experience plenty more of these broken character animations. Following this tutorial, Alan wakes up on a ferry headed into the town of Bright Falls. As you can see, the ferry driver is really excited, a feature that was absent in the original game. One of my favorite scenes in Alan Wake is right here at the Oh Dear Diner. Although new players won't be aware of it, this scene, along with the two brief scenes right before it, serves to introduce nearly every major character in the game. While not every character actually appears directly in these scenes, the ones that don't are still mentioned by name, with the exception of FBI agent Robert Nightingale. These scenes serve as a brilliant introduction to Alan Wake, and in the remaster, they contain a number of strange errors and bugs. Back in January of 2022, I made a video about the then current state of Alan Wake Remastered, and I noted that the animations for Rusty were busted. Now, if you look at the diner scene, the park ranger, Rusty, his idle animation's broken. So you can see, it's so strange. I'm gonna play it again here. He just warps into his idle animation in a very strange way. You can see almost like he's being vacuum sealed, you know? This is so weird. And and then he holds that, and he's just completely frozen. Now he does look around a little bit, which is part of the idle animation in the original game, and then he vacuum seals back into position. Very weird, very weird. Now if we go, I captured that same scene in the original, and you can see as he's reading the paper, his fingers move, his shoulders move, his head moves, he breathes. He's like a living person. He's going to be moving around just a tad as he's reading the paper. 1 year later, the animation is still broken, but in a different way. It's hard to even really describe what's going on here, but it's definitely off, and it's nothing like the animation from the original game. Beyond this, Rose, the waitress at the diner, has taken to doing these intense spins. It should be needless to say that these spins don't appear in the original version of Alan Wake. Another type of animation bug that I regularly encountered throughout the game is what looks to me like missing keyframes. Characters are often on an obvious animation loop, and in many instances, when the animation loop resets, the character will abruptly snap into place. As you can see here, this is something that is not found in the original version of the game. Admittedly, I didn't replay entirely through the remaster before making this video, but in the 3 to 4 hours of the game that I did play, there was no shortage of glitches, crashes, and general weirdness that was not present in the original PC port of Alan Wake. Certain progress halting bugs still appear to be an issue in different versions of the remaster, and while those can usually be remedied by just restarting the chapter that you're on, you shouldn't have to do that sort of thing while playing Alan Wake. I experienced 2 progress halting bugs during previous playthroughs of the remaster, neither of which showed up for me this time around. However, I did experience a brand new game-breaking bug here in The Signal, which is the first of 2 DLC episodes now bundled with all versions of Alan Wake. You're supposed to receive a flashlight and a gun shortly after entering this room, but for some reason that never happened and I was just stuck in there, and I only got this area working correctly after completely shutting down and restarting the game. Certain visual effects in Alan Wake, like the fog or the hazy warping of the environment when entering enemy encounters, have been noticeably toned down in the remaster. Overall, the remaster is a brighter looking game, with less fog, less shadow, and less muted color grading. These visual differences are the sort of thing where I can see players preferring the look of one game over the other, which is totally fair. But it's undeniable that the overall visual identity of the original game is a big part of what made it such a classic. And even if you do prefer the brighter look of the remaster, it's a lot harder to argue for the superiority of things like this. Personally, I'm reminded of the old PC port of Silent Hill 2. Fans took it upon themselves to restore missing visual effects that they felt were crucial to the tone and feel of the game. Their work resulted in the Enhanced Edition mod for Silent Hill 2, and I wouldn't mind seeing a similar fan mod for Alan Wake Remastered at some point in the future. Alan Wake Remastered updated all of the major character models in the game. While I understand that Alan Wake's character model was changed to better resemble Ilkavili, the actor who portrays him, I feel like he often winds up looking cross-eyed. Now, I can definitely see that Ilkavili's eyes aren't totally symmetrical, but there is a lot of live action footage of him, even in the game itself, and he never really looks like this. It's an odd thing to me, but I noticed that there are plenty of other characters that have some weird things going on with their eyes in the remaster, so it's really just par for the course. Before publishing this video, I went back into the game and successfully recreated all of these bugs that I mentioned. I did this because whenever I see discussions about the state of the remaster come up, there are some people who express that they didn't experience any issues at all. Like I suggested earlier, some of these bugs might be so minor to new players or players who hadn't experienced the original game in over a decade that they just went unnoticed. Other bugs, especially the ones that halt game progress, do seem to show up almost at random, with some players persistently experiencing them and others not experiencing them at all. But there's another, more upsetting reason why some players are reporting certain bugs and other players haven't seen those bugs. Remember when I said that one of the patches actually wound up breaking cutscene dialogue for some players? Well, it turns out that the broken enemy physics are actually the result of the most recent Alan Wake Remastered patch. If you look at game footage from Alan Wake Remastered posted before January of 2022, like this first impressions video that I made back in October of 2021, you'll see that the enemy physics work just like they should. Fast forward a few months, and all gameplay footage is likely to look more like this. Part of me feels like it's overly harsh to call this video the failure of Alan Wake Remastered. I'm a huge fan of Alan Wake, and a huge fan of Remedy in general. I've dedicated a ton of time to their games, and I've even been able to exchange messages with some folks who work at Remedy, and they were actually really complimentary about the Remedy-related videos here on this channel. But I spent $30 on a pre-order for this game, and it was in a pretty bad state at launch. In addition to many of the bugs I've already mentioned, I had bugs that forced me to lose progress in the game, I had bugs that caused certain events in the game to never trigger, and I went away from that transaction feeling really sour about the whole situation. I reached out to Remedy at the time, asking if there were any patches planned for Alan Wake Remastered. Well, several months after launch, we finally got those patches, and the patches wound up causing even more bugs. Because of all this, and the fact that none of these issues I've mentioned are present in the original version of the game, Alan Wake Remastered, in my opinion, is a failure. But I also think that the game may be a victim of circumstance. From what I've read, Alan Wake Remastered was being developed while a lot of the Remedy staff was adjusting to working remotely due to the pandemic, and it was being remotely co-developed with D3T, a UK support studio that also helped with the recent Nintendo Switch port of the remaster. Many reviews for that Switch port state that the overall fidelity and frame rate of the game are notably worse than the original Xbox 360 version. And most of those reviewers suggest waiting on a patch before purchasing the game, but you've already seen how that's likely to go. Remedy took another hit on the chin with the February 2022 release of Crossfire X, which is sort of a Call of Duty clone that featured an original single-player campaign developed by Remedy Entertainment. That game also saw a very buggy launch, and it struck out with many critics and players. Like Alan Wake Remastered, Crossfire X didn't generate any profits for Remedy, and with 5 other games currently in development, I can see how the prudent option here might be to just forge ahead. If Alan Wake Remastered isn't pulling in any money, it's hard to argue for putting more money into its development for further patches, and that's why I believe that this game will indefinitely exist in its current compromised state. So, to reiterate, if you're on PlayStation, the remaster is your best bet because it's your only option. And despite the flaws, it is still a good story, and most of the bugs won't actually keep you from experiencing the game. But on Xbox and on PC, I truly feel that the original version is the superior experience. There's a backwards compatible special edition of the game available for Xbox that comes with a lot of bonus materials, and all of these bonus materials also come bundled with the Steam and GOG releases of the game. However, if you buy the original Alan Wake through Epic, which is currently the exclusive distributor for Alan Wake Remastered and the upcoming Alan Wake 2, you won't get any of those bonus materials. Overall, Alan Wake Remastered doesn't offer enough to justify the $30 price tag, at least not in my opinion, and especially not when the PC port is half the price with none of the hassle. That's just how I feel though. I'm curious to know how you feel. Do you think that all of the bugs and glitches in the remaster justify the improved graphics? Does the state of the Alan Wake remaster make you at all skeptical about the upcoming Max Payne remakes? Are you one of the lucky players that didn't experience any bugs at all in Alan Wake Remastered? Meet me down in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to Hidden Machine. We post new videos all the time, and we have a very large back catalog of stuff for you to check out. And if you really love it, you can support us on Patreon. Until next time, see ya.